There's a place in America where time doesn't move, it stops. Where the brightest light an inmate sees is a fluorescent bulb humming over concrete. Where some of the most dangerous men on earth spend 22 to 23 hours a day alone in a cell the size of a walk-in closet. They call it the Alcatraz of the Rockies, ADX Florence. But what if I told you what's happening inside ADX today is far more disturbing than what the public has ever heard? What if I told you that some inmates haven't touched another human being in years? That some have forgotten how sunlight feels? That others have developed their own secret methods to communicate through walls that were designed to stop communication entirely? This is a story of daily life inside the most secure prison in the world. A place built for terrorists, cartel bosses, serial killers, and men the government calls too dangerous to ever walk free again. This is the real ADX Florence. And today we open its doors. Before we open the gates to America's most feared prison, before we step inside the concrete maze built to break the world's most dangerous men, I need you to do one thing. Hit that like button, share this documentary with someone who thinks they know prisons, and subscribe so you never miss the stories they try to keep buried. Because what you're about to see, what really happens inside ADX Florence, is darker, quieter, and more disturbing than anything the public has ever been told. This is a place where inmates don't just lose their freedom. They lose time, speech, sunlight, and sometimes they lose themselves. So prepare yourself. Turn up your volume. And remember, every click of support helps us shine a light into the darkest corners of America's prison system. Now, let's step inside the fortress they call the Alcatraz of the Rockies, where silence is a weapon and daily life is a battle nobody ever sees. The first sound you hear is nothing. Before we talk about the notorious inmates, before we explore the violence, the routines, the psychological warfare of isolation, we need to understand the most terrifying part of ADX Florence. The silence, not the silence of peace, the silence of containment. Inside ADX, sound doesn't travel far. Every hallway is designed to absorb noise. Every door is built to mute voices. Every cell is wrapped in thick concrete that feels more like a bunker than a prison room. When a new inmate arrives, the first thing they notice is how quiet everything is. Some describe it as oppressive. Some say it feels like the world ended and they were the only survivor. And some find the quiet comforting because it's the only time they're not being hunted. The ADX routine, life in a box. For most inmates, the day begins the same way, with a slot opening at the bottom of their cell door and a tray sliding through. Breakfast, no human contact, no conversation, often no eye contact. Inside ADX today, inmates live under a system known as restricted housing. To the public, it sounds like solitary confinement. To the inmates, it is solitary confinement, but amplified to a level almost no other facility in the world enforces. 22 to 23 hours a day in a single cell, a cell built with a bed made of poured concrete, a desk made of concrete, a stool molded from concrete, a shower inside the cell with automatic timers, a black and white TV playing only educational or religious programming, a tiny slit window angled upward so they can't see the ground, the fences, or other inmates. Only sky. The design is intentional. ADX is engineered with one purpose. No inmate communicates. No inmate organizes. No inmate escapes. The hour of freedom, recreation in the concrete box. At most prisons, inmates get a yard. At ADX Florence, inmates get something else. A concrete room, bare, windowless, with a small metal grate where sunlight filters in like a spotlight. This is rec time. 1 hour a day if they behave. If not, they remain inside the cell for 24 hours straight. Some inmates pace the tiny space in circles. Some do push-ups until their arms fail. Some stare at the patch of sky through the grate, imagining the world beyond the razor wire. One former guard described it like this. They walk into the rec room, and it looks like the inside of a shipping container. Notorious inmates, but not how you expect. Everyone knows ADX houses the worst of the worst. The Unabomber before his death. Cartel assassins. mastermind terrorists, killers who murdered other inmates in less secure prisons. But what people don't understand is this. ADX isn't just filled with violent men. It's filled with men the government considers uncontrollable. Men who can radicalize other inmates, can order hits from inside prison, can smuggle information, can influence entire criminal networks from a single phone call. So ADX does something no other prison in America does at this scale. It isolates influence, not just violence. And that's what makes daily life so unique and so psychologically brutal. The sound of another inmate, a rare thing. Inside most prisons, noise is constant. Yelling, banging, shouting down the tier. ADX is different. The walls prevent almost all vocal communication. Almost. Some inmates still try. Some tap messages through pipes. Some shout into vents, hoping the echo reaches someone else. But often, the only voice an inmate hears in a day is their own. A former prisoner once said, "At ADX, you get to know every sound your mind makes." Incoming threats, outgoing sanity. Daily life at ADX isn't violent on the surface. There are no riots, no gang wars, no chaotic group fights. But underneath that stillness lives another danger, the erosion of the mind. Some inmates begin talking to themselves. Some develop imaginary companions. Some start screaming, not out of anger, but simply to hear something other than their heartbeat and their thoughts. And the guards know this. They see the psychological changes. They document them. Because ADX was built for long-haul isolation, but the human mind was not. The cameras never blink. Inside ADX, an inmate is almost never seen by another inmate, but always seen by the staff. Cameras monitor their cells, their movements, their meals, even their showers. An officer once described it like this. It's not a prison. It's a laboratory built to study isolation. The men behind the doors. To understand daily life inside ADX Florence, you need to understand something many people get wrong. Most inmates here are not pacing, shouting, or rioting. They don't have the energy for that. Isolation drains you slowly, almost politely, until you become a different version of yourself. But each man behind these doors came here with a past violent enough, powerful enough, or dangerous enough that the federal government decided the only safe place for them was an individual concrete box. Today, we explore their world, the notorious wing, and what life looks like inside it. Inside ADX is a tier known as H Unit, often called the most secure place in America. It's where high-profile terrorists, cartel lieutenants, and internationally known criminals are held. But what people don't realize is this. Even inside ADX, these inmates live under a stricter reality than the others. Let's break it down. The cell they can't escape, physically or mentally. Cells in H Unit look the same at first glance, but the psychological effect is different. The window, a 4-inch slit angled upward, shows no horizon, no walls, no humans. Only sky. Why? Because psychologists found that showing an inmate parts of the world, a tree, a fence, another inmate, causes longing, anger, and mental instability. But showing only sky keeps them contained. Imagine waking up every day, and the only thing you can see is a small strip of blue or gray. Never knowing if it's cold, sunny, windy, or raining. Never seeing another human face, unless it's behind glass and steel. This is not an accident. This is engineering. The breakfast that tells you your place. Around 6 a.m., a steel food slot drops open. The sound is metallic, quick. A hinge, a tray, a clang. Some inmates wake up before it. Others sleep through it. Breakfast is usually oatmeal, maybe powdered eggs, a carton of milk, and sometimes, if they're lucky, a piece of fruit. No forks, no knives, no metal. Everything is built so nothing can be used as a weapon. Each tray is scanned. Each movement is monitored. Each action is logged. This isn't a routine. It's surveillance disguised as routine. How guards interact with the most dangerous men in America. Contrary to what Hollywood shows, guards do not yell, shove, or taunt inmates here. Why? Because contact equals danger. At ADX, guards speak through reinforced glass. Orders are given remotely. Restraints are applied through cuff ports. Movement is controlled by electronic locks. Most guards never even hear an inmate's voice clearly. Everything is muffled by walls, glass, or distance. And the inmates know this. One former officer said, "You never forget the sound of a man trying to talk to you through 6 inches of steel." The 1 hour of freedom, the concrete yard. Every inmate at ADX gets up to 1 hour of recreation a day. But the word yard is misleading. Here's what it really is. A solitary concrete room with 20-foot walls, a steel door, and a single overhead grate, where sunlight drops in like a spotlight on a prisoner's stage. Many inmates call it the cage. Some pace in circles. Some jog in place. Some stand still and look at the sky like it's a forbidden memory. But the most heartbreaking part? Many eventually stop going. Because even freedom feels like a chore when your world is 8 by 12 feet. The daily checks, a humanity that feels mechanical. Throughout the day, guards perform what they call tier checks. They walk past rows of sealed doors and glance through thick, bulletproof glass to ensure each inmate is alive, upright, and breathing. But the interaction lasts seconds. A glance, a clipboard note, move on. Some inmates go months without speaking to staff beyond yes or no. One former inmate described it like this. You start forgetting how to talk. Sentences feel heavy. Words feel foreign. The men who talk to no one. But everyone knows their name. Inside ADX are men whose names once dominated headlines. Men who carried out attacks, ordered killings, controlled networks. And now they spend their days eating in silence, exercising alone, watching pre-screened TV programs, reading heavily censored mail, writing letters that will be opened, scanned, reviewed, and sometimes rejected, staring at concrete walls, thinking, remembering, breaking, surviving, or slowly fading. For many of them, this is their final prison. ADX isn't a phase. It's the end. The unwritten rule inside ADX. There's a phrase whispered among officers who work there. If you come to ADX, you don't come back. Not because the inmates die, but because almost none are ever transferred out. Very few improve enough to move to a step-down program. Most remain where they are until age, illness, or time claims them. Daily life isn't designed to rehabilitate. It's designed to contain. And that's exactly what it does. The silent network, how inmates communicate through concrete. Inside ADX Florence, the architecture is designed to do the impossible. Erase communication. Not limit it. Not discourage it. Erase it. Every wall is thick concrete. Every vent is angled. Every window faces the sky. Every door seals like an airlock. If a man screams at the top of his lungs inside his cell, the next inmate may not hear a single word. But criminals, especially the ones held in ADX, are innovators. And they build a secret communication network inside a place engineered to prevent one. Today we decode it. The vent system, the ghost phone line of ADX. Most inmates inside Supermax cells have a small air vent near the ceiling. Designed to circulate stale air, it's not meant to transmit sound. But the inmates discovered something years ago. If they press their faces against a metal and speak in a near whisper, the air shaft carries vibrations sideways to another vent, 2 cells down, or sometimes even farther. Not clearly, not in sentences, but as faint, coded pulses. This is known inside ADX as ghost talk. You don't yell. You don't speak normally. You whisper, deep, slow, with long pauses. Some inmates spend hours every day lying on their backs, staring up at the vent, waiting for the faintest murmur of another human being. The plumbing code, tapping through water lines. Before ADX architects realized how creative inmates could be, the plumbing system connected multiple cells. Not by design, but through physics. Metal pipes carry vibrations. So inmates created what staff call the tap code, a rhythm, a sequence, a language built from knocks. 3 taps means yes. 2 taps means no. A rapid series says stop. Long, slow taps form letters. It's not perfect, but when you live in a world where no voices exist, you learn to listen to pipes like they're radio frequencies. One former inmate described it. Some nights, that tapping was the only proof I wasn't buried alive. The window mirror signals. Every cell has a window slit angled toward the sky. Very few face each other, but those that do, even slightly, become communication lines. Inmates use pieces of metal from shampoo caps, shiny foil from food wrappers, polished plastic, even a reflection on their steel toilet. They bounce sunlight in patterns. Reflective flashes, short, sharp-coated. Prison staff know about it, but stopping it is almost impossible, because inside ADX, sunlight is rare, and when an inmate sees it, he uses it. The art of illegal kites, letters that shouldn't exist. A kite is an unofficial inmate letter, and at ADX, kites are banned. But inmates are experts at hiding them. Some write on toilet paper, strips of sheets, layers of food cartons, shredded clothing fibers. They use diluted toothpaste as glue, hair or milk as ink, and soap as an eraser. These letters are smuggled through laundry bags, meal trays, cleaning crews, legal mail, and sometimes the rec yard drain. Every successful kite is a victory, because at ADX, written communication is more dangerous than violence. One guard said, "A knife can kill one person. Information can kill dozens." Why communication matters so much here. It's not about companionship. Not entirely. Not at first. Inside ADX, communication equals power. Power to organize, radicalize, plan, manipulate, intimidate, order hits, spread ideology, maintain status beyond the walls. The federal government fears one thing above all: a high-value inmate influencing the outside world. That's why ADX is built like a concrete labyrinth, not to punish bodies, to isolate minds, the men who break the system, and how staff respond. Not every inmate here is passively isolated. Some fight back. Some test the system's limits every day. One, the voice that carries too far. There was an inmate who discovered a flaw in the vent structure. He could speak through his vent and be heard clearly across an entire tier. To staff, this was a threat. A man who could organize anything, a protest, a hunger strike, an assault, without ever leaving his cell. He was immediately transferred to the deepest, most isolated block. His cell was reinforced. His vents were altered. His walls thickened. His voice was taken. 2. The inmate who used a mirror signal to send intel. Another inmate used a piece of metal from a broken shower panel to flash signals to another unit. It took 2 weeks to catch him, but those 2 weeks caused chaos. Messages got through. Requests were made. Favors called in. When staff discovered the metal, they shipped him to D-Unit, a place inmates call the black hole of ADX. 3. The man who wrote a 14-page manifesto in toothpaste. He hid it behind the steel mirror in his cell. He used soap and milk residue to write his words invisibly. When the page dried, the writing appeared faintly under angled light. He planned to pass it through the laundry system. He never got the chance. A random search uncovered the manifesto. It was confiscated. He was denied rec time for months. Every possession he had was removed. At ADX, information isn't just contraband, it's a weapon. The dark truth. Many inmates communicate, not for power, but sanity. For some men here, the world is too quiet, too still, too empty. They whisper into vents not a scheme, but to hear another human answer. They tap pipes not a plot, but to prove someone else is alive. One inmate wrote in a letter, "The silence chokes you. Even a tap from a stranger feels like a lifeline." Another said, "We talk through walls because the walls talk back." And that's the paradox of ADX Florence, a place built to isolate men, yet pushing them to create their own invisible community through concrete. D-Unit, the black hole of ADX. If the main facility at ADX Florence is a world of silence, D-Unit is something worse, a world of erasure. This is where inmates go when even Supermax isolation, already the harshest in the federal system, isn't enough to control them. Here, the rules change. The lights change. The sounds change. The men change. Welcome to the place inmates call the black hole. The purpose of D-Unit, beyond punishment. Officially, D-Unit is described as a disciplinary range, a temporary holding wing for inmates who attack staff, attack other inmates, attempt escape, create weapons, incite violence, commit serious rule violations, or show signs of hyperagitation. Unofficially, the unit is where the prison sends men to break their momentum and sometimes their minds. This is where the government isolates those who try to outmaneuver the system. The radicalizers, the planners, the manipulators, the ones who, even in an 8 by 12 concrete box, still find ways to influence the world outside. The unit strips away everything that gives them leverage. The cell, the quietest place on Earth. The unit cells look similar to standard ADX cells, but the psychological difference is night and day. Each cell is smaller, bare, dimly lit, soundproof with additional padding, completely sealed, stripped of privileges, and watched constantly through reinforced glass and cameras. Inmates describe the silence as heavy, like the air itself is pressing down on them. One former ADX staff member once said, "The walls in D-Unit swallow sound. A man could scream for an hour, and you might not hear it standing 10 feet away." And for many inmates, that silence becomes the loudest thing in their life. The 24/7 light, the first form of psychological pressure. In the main facility, lights dim at night, not for comfort, but to mimic a circadian rhythm. In D-Unit, the lights never turn off. A bright, cold, clinical bulb illuminates the cell 24 hours a day. Some inmates cover their eyes with their shirts until staff confiscate them. Others curl into the corner, trying to escape the glare. But you can't escape. Not here. The constant light disorients them, blurs time, erases sleep patterns, destroys their sense of day and night. After weeks in D-Unit, many lose track of when they last slept, ate, or even moved. The blackout protocol. When a man completely loses control, there's a phrase whispered among ADX officers, code blackout. It's not listed on the website, not in brochures, not in public records. But former staff hint at it, a last resort measure used when an inmate becomes violently unstable, beyond control, beyond reason, beyond communication. Here's how it works. The inmate cell goes fully dark. No light, absolute blackness. External sound is completely cut. Air vents slow. Doors seal. Footsteps vanish. Staff does not speak during rounds. No verbal contact. Only visual checks. The inmate receives minimal items. No books. No paper. No radio. No TV. Nothing. For hours, sometimes days, the inmate exists in a void. Staff say the purpose is to neutralize sensory overload. Inmates say it's to break them. One former inmate wrote in a lawsuit, "In blackout, time stops. You forget your name before you forget the walls." The men who end up here, cases the public rarely hears about. 1. The weapon maker. A prisoner once crafted a shank using the metal ring from a legal binder and the melted plastic of a toothbrush. He never used it, but he possessed it. At ADX, possession alone is a catastrophe. He was thrown into D-Unit for 4 months. In that time, he reportedly stopped speaking for weeks. When he returned to the main range, he didn't talk to anyone for a year. 2. The radicalizer. Another inmate, known for influencing men around him, was caught spreading coded messages through pipes and drains. When investigators discovered the scheme, he was moved to D-Unit immediately. His mail was frozen. His TV privileges revoked. His rec time removed. He spent 15 months in near total sensory deprivation. By the time he was moved back, officers said he barely made eye contact and seemed slowed. 3. The escape artist. There was an inmate who had a history of escapes from lower security facilities. When he arrived at ADX, he began testing the limits every day, timing guard movements, studying locks, manipulating food trays, observing the angles of cameras, removing small screws from fixtures with sharpened fingernails. When staff realized what he was doing, he was immediately transferred to D-Unit. He spent over a year there with nothing to manipulate, nothing to study, nothing to escape. When released, he stared at walls like he expected them to move. The torture of time. Nothing happens here, but everything changes you. In D-Unit, time stops existing as a linear concept. Minutes drag, hours blur, days blend, weeks vanish. Without a clock, without darkness, without interaction, the human mind collapses inward. Some inmates talk to invisible people, repeat the same sentence for hours, laugh randomly, cry silently, curl in corners, scratch words into the walls, whisper to themselves, pace until their feet bleed. One former guard said, "You can watch a man unravel one thread at a time." Another added, "The unit breaks the thinkers first, not the violent ones, not the impulsive ones, the planners, the strategists, the manipulators, because the unit removes the one thing they rely on, their mind." Why D-Unit terrifies even the most hardened inmates. Most prisoners in America fear violence, rival gangs, stabbings, riots, being targeted, being jumped. At ADX, none of that happens. But D-Unit changes the rules. Here, inmates fear losing their personality, forgetting faces, forgetting language, hallucinations, endless light, endless silence, endless emptiness, the blackout cell, the sense that time has dissolved, and above all, the fear that no one will notice when they break. The dark truth: some men never come back from D-Unit. Even when inmates return to the standard ADX range, something in them stays inside D-Unit. Their posture, their speech, their eyes, their reactions, their silence, their distrust, their fear, their hopelessness. An ADX officer once described it. They come back physically, but the version of them that leaves D-Unit is not the same one that went in. And that is the psychological power of the black hole. Inside ADX Florence, time doesn't pass. It loops. Every step echoes. Every breath feels measured. And every inmate, whether notorious, forgotten, or feared, faces the same truth. In a place built to break the human spirit, survival becomes the only act of rebellion. Today, you and I walk the halls no one ever sees. We look through the slits in the doors, breathed the recycled air of concrete cages, and saw what life really looks like for the men the world decided must never again taste freedom. If this journey opened your eyes, if it made you think, if it pulled you deeper into a world most people avoid, then don't leave this place without showing support. Hit like so more people discover the truth behind these walls. Subscribe so you never miss the next deep dive into the hidden corners of America's darkest institutions. And share this video with someone who believes they know what maximum security really means. Asterisk. Because somewhere in the silence of ADX Florence, another day is beginning, another door is locking, and another story waits to be told.